Hey, you're listening to the Superpower Radio Show with your host, Brenda Major,
Mia Dawson.
And boy, do we have a great show for you today. We have some incredible men on our show, 4 of them. This is the first time we've had 4 guests on the show, and they know each other well. They are with a group called AutisHim, which I absolutely love. And we are so excited to have you all and to learn more about what you do. We know, especially in the African American community, that so many households are headed by women, about 65 or 6% or so. And then Mia, you know, from meeting with folks who have super kids, superpower kids, that it's normally, you know, the mom who is present. But
Yes.
today we've got 4 powerhouse men who are going to take us through their journeys. And listeners, you are going to get so much value from this. And
Yes.
I mean, I can already tell they're a brotherhood.
Yeah.
And we're just excited to know. First question right off the bat, how did this organization get started?
Man, so without trying to go into a long story, first off, my name is Tyrone.
And
Tyrone
please
Green.
introduce yourself.
Introduce yourself.
For sure. Like I said before, my name is Tyrone Green. And so the way this group got started, kind of fast tracking, there is a group called the Colors of Autism Foundation. I did one of their trainings, my wife and I, and so they started a men's group, just a men's support group for Black fathers with kids on the spectrum. And so they asked me to kind of, be a part of it. One thing led to another. I ended up running or facilitating the group. And we started off with just, maybe 3 or 4 individuals. And, it built into something that has been really, really wonderful. We average probably about, if everybody showed up, we probably have between maybe 20 to 25 people. So
Wow.
it's grown. And so these brothers that I'm with on this call are a part of that group. And so we always have really great conversations during our sessions. And so, it was just pretty much like, man, this would be like a great podcast. And so I reached out to the brothers. I didn't reach out to everybody, but I reached out to select individuals and just asked them, would they be down if we started a podcast? And everybody said yes. We're missing a member of the group. His name is Awit. He had to step away for a little bit, family duties. But yeah, I asked the brothers if they wanted to be a part of it. They said yeah, and here we are. So that's pretty much the story.
As each of you is going to get a chance to kind of share your input on this, but when you think about, even starting this kind of group, was there any, apprehension? And what were your thoughts when you decided to join?
I will let somebody else go first.
Yeah, Nick is cracking up. So go ahead.
Peace, everybody. I'm Nick Richardson. It was some apprehension when starting the podcast. I mean, for the most part, we are opening up a piece of our lives, and an important piece of our lives to the world in being fathers. It's a bond with our children who are on the spectrum that in some households it could be seen as sacred. A lot of people don't like talking about their children or talking about their experiences with their children. In some conversations and in some spaces, wives and children are off limits, depending on the space. But our podcast is about our relationship to our children who happen to be on the spectrum. And so what I've realized is there are other people who may need to hear similar stories. There's some brothers out there who, and some of us at one time or another, are just apprehensive about talking about having a child on the spectrum. There may be some moms out there who want to see a different perspective. And so that could be, something, a space that we could possibly fill. But I know personally, I thought having the podcast was actually a great idea. Tyrone came with the idea, like he said earlier, but I had never thought about, sharing a piece of my life, who I am, my family, with the world. And so we have to be mindful about what we say and how we say it, because this definitely goes out to the world, and we don't want to give off the image that we're the most perfect fathers, because we all have our fair share of mistakes, but we also don't want to put our families in a light where it's not shown appropriate, or the truth isn't out there. So we definitely want to make sure that we're doing the show justice, that we're doing each other justice, and most importantly, that we're doing our family justice.
Go ahead,
I was going to ask if each one of them can tell me the ages of their kiddos who are superpower. We say superpower kids who are diagnosed on the spectrum.
Yeah, so
go
I'm
ahead,
Travis Jackson.
Okay.
My oldest son, I have 2 boys. My oldest son is 7 currently.
7. Okay.
And so my son is 10, actually about to be 11 in December. So
Okay.
And my son is 9.
No. Okay.
Yes, what's up, Lonnie Mans? My son just turned 11.
Oh, okay. So you guys, they're all around the same ages. Okay.
I wanted to touch on really quick the question you asked about being apprehensive about the podcast.
Yeah.
And so when I had the idea to start it and I reached out to everybody, I was kind of terrified because I didn't know what they were going to say. I didn't know if it was going to be a positive response or if it was going to be like, man, fool, get out of my face with that. I ain't trying to hear none of that. Because I'm not trying to put all Black men in a box, because, we're not speaking for all Black men. We're not a monolith. This is just strictly our experiences, our opinions. But we're not normally vulnerable, especially with our families, right? We're very private people.
Yep.
And so to put ourselves out there, like Nick was saying, like every time we record and we have to come up with different topics and we have to talk about those topics for a certain amount of time, it can be tough, because we have to be careful about what we say. When it comes to the editing, I have to make sure that if I see one of my brothers saying something they probably shouldn't say, I have to edit it out, or I'll send it to them like, hey, you guys think this is, good to keep in, or make sure you review the episode to make sure that everybody feels comfortable before I put it out. So yeah, there was like a lot of apprehension because, the world can be cruel and people can make crazy comments and things like that. But I think overall, because we lead with love and we lead with positivity, it seems to be working.
Okay.
And I'll say one thing about that too. It took me a really long time to be able to say out loud, I have an autistic son, right? I'm talking about the past year and a half, 2. It's new for me to say that out loud, right?
Wow.
I've always avoided that discussion, and I couldn't see it, which is peculiar because I'm in the education space, right? And so I work with autistic kids. Now here I am, I can't say out loud that my son is autistic, and so that's some things that I had to grow into and get comfortable. This is my reality, and so you got to own it and keep it moving. So I think it's been helpful for me to get more comfortable with that. And really, I reached out to the group initially because it's very isolating, right? Being a dad, Black dad, and then having a kid with autism and not really knowing all the answers and wanting to find community. So
can I ask why, if you don't mind saying, Lonnie, why was it hard for you to even verbalize it and say it? Because I hear a lot of men say that, Black and white, actually. So I was just wondering from a male's perspective, why is it harder for you guys to say that?
I just, as my son, 2 ways. Like, I've always been like in the, gifted classes. I've always been like academics was always my playing field. It's where things are equal. We ain't have money growing up, but I had my brains. I could beat you in the classroom, right? And so I always had the expectation, my son, this boy going to college, 15, 16, I always had these certain, this imagined future, right? And so when he had these different challenges, I had to adapt my expectations. And then I had to be like, my new job is to help him reach his potential, whatever that is, right? And so he's just made great strides. He's doing really well. He's on level now academically, but I had to rethink the way that I do things and learn things to be able to adapt to him. How can I best support him and help him get to where he wanted to be? So I had to, it wasn't about me anymore. It was about him. And so that was a big shift.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I hope you guys realize that this is groundbreaking what you're doing.
Yes.
As
Yes, I was
fathers,
just thinking that.
as African American men, guiding super kids and
Yes.
being the protectors and role models for your family and for the community. So I'm just thrilled to be in this space with you. I do want to talk a little bit about vulnerability and pride, because I hear that coming through, and it's common. Hey, I got my son. What were your expectations when you saw that little fella for the first time? And then what made you decide, one, to go and even have the diagnosis made on your sons, each of you?
So me personally, I'm very prideful. That's one thing that I am, and sometimes it could be my fault, my downfall, honestly.
Okay.
As far as expectations go, myself growing up, I played sports. Was very social and active. A very outgoing person. And then my son got diagnosed October 2021, after just kind of seeing the signs and the regression. So once that did occur, it was a bit of a dark time for me, in which I had to figure a lot of things out with my wife. But after some conversations, I had to figure out a way to not only be better for the family, but also put myself mentally in the right position. So really just making sure that I'm guiding him in the right direction, and knowing that he still has the ability to do things. He still can play sports. He still can be involved. May it take a little help or a little more help? Yes, it will. But that's where I have to put in those extra hours outside of my career and what I like to do personally. I have another job, and that's number one, is to be a father.
So really quick, I think on the question you asked,
Yeah.
when as men that care, and I want to be specific when I say that, because there is a lot of men out there that don't care about their children. That when you're a father that actually cares, for myself, when I first heard I was having a son, automatically I felt like, oh, it's going to be a little me running around. He's gonna be the best of what I am, not the flaws, but the best of what I am. And so when my son first got diagnosed, he was 3 years old, and I remember going through all the emotion of confusion, frustration, anger, sadness. I even questioned my faith, because I'm looking at this situation and I'm saying, why me? What did I do? Did I do something wrong? Like, I went through all that emotion, and through guidance and counseling, and but just believing that everything was going to be okay, I learned, like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with my son. My son can do all the things that a neurotypical kid can do. His mind just processes things differently. So I think I had to let my pride go in order for me to grow with my son, because if I would have held on to that, then I don't believe I would be where I am today with facilitating a group, let alone starting a podcast. So for me, it was just about letting that go in the beginning. And it wasn't easy. It was hard. With the help of my wife and my family, I learned to let it go and just focus on him now and move forward.
I see Lonnie nodding.
I was going to say, I still got my pride. I just had to change it. So I'm like,
okay, tell us about
what are
that.
you interested in now, young man? How are we going to make you shine at it? So it's been fun, like following his interests, but then pushing him in those interests. And so he wanted to learn how to play piano. I'm like tone deaf. I got no musical skill, but I found a piano teacher. She really adapted to him day one. I said, I got a kid on the spectrum. He wants to learn piano. And I took her to his house, and she was like, shut up, go somewhere, right? You don't know me. And he sat beside her, and he was just like best friends instantly with this. I had to leave.
Wow.
I'm crying because he met somebody day one that she know who he is. She seen he adapted to her, and so he's playing piano, doing well. And so I've been enjoying seeing him do things that I didn't do. And the best thing so far for me has been finding other people like that who see my son the way that I see him. And so I've his speech therapist is the same way. He has a math tutor the same way. People who day one he click with. And so that's been the biggest benefit, finding people who see him. So
yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Nick?
Well, I guess it is my turn.
It
How do you follow up those stories? When I first saw my son, the first day of his life, I did what every other parent does. I think, you count the fingers and toes and you make sure that they all there. Praying that he has my brain and my wife's heart. My wife has a big heart. I'm like Lonnie. I'm a book guy. I'm brain scholastic. That was me. And so, like Lonnie said, you have a vision of your child. I didn't find out. Well, we didn't find out that my son was on the spectrum until he was in kindergarten.
Wow.
So he's now in a school environment. Most of the other environments before then were, daycare type of environments where, all of the children are doing all kinds of, different things. When you're 1 year old in a daycare environment, you eating your feet. And then when you 3 years old in a daycare environment, you playing with glue and, and paint. Come home with stuff all over your face. And so it all seems normal.
Yeah.
And so you then get placed in the school environment, and he had a teacher that at the beginning of that school, we did not see eye to eye with. But towards the end of that school, towards the middle of the school, it was, you might want to get him looked at, checked out, and so that's what we did. And we found out that he was on the spectrum. I reacted differently. I went into fix-it mode.
Okay.
I went into, this is a problem, let's get the solution. I didn't take time to examine my emotions the way I should have. We found a doctor, we got a diagnosis, we started working. My wife is in the social work space. So she helped me a lot with dealing with not only my emotions, but my interactions with my son when we first started, and also what steps needed to happen as he's getting older. We need to find some therapy. Let's get some ABA therapy in here. So we have ABA therapists, and let's try to, work on, now that he's in the school system, let's try to work on getting him some supports in the school system. Let's get him around some other children. So we have dyads, and we have supports in school systems. And so we're trying to do all of these things. But you still have to work on your child not being raised the way you were. See, because I wasn't diagnosed with a disability or differing ability. So I'm what they consider neurotypical.
Right.
And my parents raised me like a neurotypical child, But now I have a son that is neurodiverse.
Yep.
And so I can't do what I know based off of where I came from and have the similar effects on my son as they had on me. And so there became like the stages of challenges that we're still currently in, because every day is a different day. So hopefully in all of that, I answered your question.
No, that's a really good thought. That I really appreciate you saying that, because you think you're right. You were not raised neurodiverse. And so now you have to change your whole concept of how you were raised, and to raise these young men, all of you, including, me too, my husband and I too, because we weren't raised like that. So the whole concept of how we were raised, you have to shift everything. I really appreciate you saying it that way. That gives me it's just a new thought.
You end up throwing out a lot of things that were done to you growing up.
Yes,
because
sir.
they're not working.
Yes, sir. That's very true.
And so we're shifting not only how we treat our son, but how we treat each other between my wife and myself, because my son then sees our interactions. And so, trying to make sure that we're raising the most productive citizen possible with whatever opportunities that we have and resources that we have around us.
You're right. I had to learn new discipline skills. Belts don't work. Belts wasn't, I might snatch them up on occasion, but no, I had to learn time out. I had to learn other techniques to really reach him.
Very
And,
true.
And figure out how to help him. And so I had to figure out social stories for him to really be able to visualize, okay, I understand what you're saying now, Dad, because he might not get what I'm saying verbally, but he might get it in the story, or he might get it in other ways. And so that's been really beneficial. And so
is it safe to say, just from hearing your responses, that having a neurodiverse child brought something out of you that maybe you didn't know was even in you, that you were capable of? Anybody want to speak to that?
I would say for me personally, the patience factor, which I still struggle with. I'll be honest here. Just some things I picked up. I'm working on with my wife is the counting thing. Giving him the opportunity to get something done. I think that was my biggest struggle and something I'm really working to master, because our children's brains work in a very unique way, in which we get things done routinely, but for them it may take some time because they're thinking about a million things at once. So really just the patience factor has been big for me, just so that he can either get a thought out or get a action done. But the work is not done. I still got to put that time in.
Yeah, I think it has brought a lot out of me. And I think the most important thing is that is maybe more conscientious of my surroundings when it comes to other children or other adults that are on the spectrum, because I work in higher education. So I work with a lot of, adults that are on the spectrum. And so it has really made me more empathetic in trying to make sure that their needs are met. And I find myself educating a lot of people. I think in my heart of hearts, I was meant to be an educator, and it has made me a better educator because I have the knowledge, I do the research, and because of my son, I see things more clearly when it comes to the world, if that makes any sense.
It does. Yeah.
It does. Yes, it does.
Come on, Nick. I know it's coming.
My goodness. So I've learned, just like all the other fellas, I've learned a lot. One of the things that I've learned is that the skills that I did not think I needed, that I had, I would have to use. Tyrone mentioned research. I hadn't done much research since, getting, whatever degrees I have. And so now with this, my son going through the IEP process in his school, having to research thoroughly just the difference between a 504 and an IEP, and having the conversations with people who confuse the two. And then trying to, then it's like, listen, there is a difference. And so the research that Tyrone talks about is one of the skills I had to dig back up and try to find out more information about regarding IEPs, 504s for my son and his education. But the one thing that I still work on is just what Trav said, is the patience, the breathing, and the calming of the nerves, and realizing that whatever energy I give my son, he gives it right back to me. So it is not just about checking them, it's about checking me. And oftentimes we don't think about that. Divergent or neurotypical child, as a parent, oftentimes we don't see or think about what our child is giving us is us, ourselves. And so we have to work on continuing to grow as individuals, so we can, have the best image possible for our children.
I had to learn that it's my job to build my son up. It's not about me anymore and what I think. It's not about leading my family. In the church, sometimes you talk about serving. I had to think more about serving my family. And so now with my son, it's like, how can I help him be successful? And so lately he's been stuttering a lot. And he's recognizing he's stuttering and he's getting frustrated and upset with himself. And he's getting really sad. And so, I'm like smiling. It's okay, baby. It's fine. Your brain's just working too fast. So I'm like, how about we write it down? And so do I want him writing things down? No, I want him to speak, but I'm giving him a new tool. So now whenever he gets overwhelmed, he can write things down and he feels good about himself, right? Because he can communicate. And so it's not about necessarily the verbal language, it's about communicating.
Yeah.
And so I'm having to think, it doesn't matter what I want. How can I best serve my child and help him just keep growing? And so that's I've had to step back and all, because I'm prideful. We mentioned that before. And I'm, mom was like, that boy's special, right? She always called me special. So I've always been kind of like that way, but it's not about me. Yeah, my kids are special. How do I best serve them? So
talk a little about pushback from family, from community. It sounds like you were all raised differently than the way that you are raising your children. And I think part of that is even generational, but I mean, face it, we all have people in the family and people in the community who say, ain't nothing wrong with that kid. You just need to smack them. You just need to. So how do you handle that?
So I love my mother to death. Like, I really do. But I struggle with my mom. My dad, not so much. I think my dad is he's a very quiet, calm person. So it was easier to talk to him. But with my mom, that was a difficult conversation because just like you said, ain't nothing wrong with him, in the beginning, you need to just do this and do that. And my mother raised me with an iron fist, like no nonsense, speak when spoken to, don't talk with grown folks is talking, like that kind of relationship. And so that was tough because I had a conversation with my mom, like, the way that you raised me, I'm not raising him like that. And I can't raise him like that because I tried that and it doesn't work. So she didn't really understand it in the beginning. And then the strangest thing happened. My mom actually got a job working with neurodivergent kids on a school bus.
Wow.
And so she had that job for probably like a couple years. And based on her experience, she started to understand and come around, and we started having more dialogue. Now, is it perfect? No, it's not. My mom is older. She goes into her ways, a lot. And so if that was challenging within itself, I think with family members, I can honestly say I really haven't had any pushback when it comes to my son and being on the spectrum. I think it's surprising because a lot of my cousins and friends that they have either know someone or have a child that's on the spectrum. So it's becoming more of a conversation. So it's not as hard to have it. And when we have it, they're asking me a lot of questions like, so, is it okay? Should I say this? Should I say that? I'm like, hey, he's still a human being. Like, treat him like a human being. He's not an animal. He's not an animal, but there are things you have to, be conscious about, that his brain is working differently than yours. So if he gets frustrated easily, that's not him being defiant. That's him just working through his emotions and trying to regulate them. So, I haven't really had a ton of pushback with family, moms a little bit, dad, okay. I can't really speak on my wife's side of the family. We've had our little situations, but, overall, it's been positive and it's been good. And I think it's because I've taken my time to do the research and really properly educate people and not just get upset or angry or flip a table or something like that when somebody says something crazy. So I think it's just really more of just approaching it from a very calm perspective. So I think overall, family wise, it's been pretty good. I don't really care about the public. Like my son ain't really had he has a few interactions with some folks, but we handle that real quick. So I don't really care about the public.
That's what dads do. We're
Yeah.
gonna pause right here. I'm not gonna say stop because we're not gonna stop the conversation.
No.
We're gonna have to go to part 2. So listeners, stay tuned. We will be back shortly. Can't let these guys go. It's just been too good.
Nope. Bye-bye.